Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name's Joseph Kearney, and as Dean of Marquette University Law School here in Milwaukee, I have the privilege of helping lead things off, and it really is quite a privilege. I thought it to be a privilege when I had the opportunity back in 2014 here in Eckstein Hall to introduce the first Mosaic conference. I'm reasonably certain that I would have suggested to my colleague Kaylee Murray that she not call it the first annual Mosaic conference, because my mother used to always to say, how do you know that it's the first annual? There may never be another one. So I probably call it the inaugural Mosaic conference then. And truly, what a great thing all of you who have been involved in this from the beginning have inaugurated. Who knows, maybe I'll have the chance to do this again in Milwaukee as soon as next year. But at the moment, my point really is just how impressive it has been that you have kept this going, even as you have contributed to your own existing communities. You've formed another community for yourselves, which is to say a community of ideas, exchanges, and although I don't see it on a daily basis, I'm quite certain one of mutual support. For those of you who, like my colleague Kaylee Murray and a number of others, have been part of this from the beginning, I do really hope that you're justly proud of yourselves for that. After all, a few things have changed in the world over the past 8 years. I'm sure you will agree. And for those of you who have come to Mosaic more recently, perhaps even today for the first time, I have an idea that you will embrace it, feel yourselves to have been embraced by it, and we'll be back next year in whatever place or medium the conference finds itself. Of course, the focus really should turn not to the past of Mosaic or its future, but rather to today's program. So I am, of course, most glad that Professor Lateef Mtima of Howard University's Law School is with me, with us. I'm sure that he will provide a more substantive introduction in a moment. I do want to say, though, just how glad I am for Marquette's opportunity to support this conference. I understand that our Marquette Intellectual Property and Innovation Law Review, I'm still learning to say that because the name of the journal recently changed to add the innovation. So I probably shouldn't press my luck, but I'm going to say it one more time that the Marquette Intellectual Property and Innovation Law Review, led by our current editor-in-chief, Alexis Whitty, has a relevant initiative this year, relevant in the sense of contributing to this conference. In particular, as you may know, the journal will begin the process of reviewing and publishing, no doubt with some editing along the way, student drafted work from a consortium of 6 historically Black law schools. Professor Murray tells me, in fact, that these works are going to be the subject of commentary engagement at this conference tomorrow, as I understand it. And I really think that that's great. So kudos to all of you for what you do for us and with us, what you do with and for one another, and truly for the next generation of students and scholars engaged in IP. We at Marquette are always glad and truly grateful for the opportunity to be part of this event. So let me hand it over to Professor Mtima.
Oh. Well, thank you, Dean Kearney and Professor Murray and everyone at Marquette for once again providing us with a platform, a host, indeed a home for this important scholarly and policy, gathering of ideas and voices. As many of you know, who have participated in the program over the years, you know that this came together just basically because there were a group of us at another conference that was hosted back when Tim, I've just mixed up a bunch of people, but as you can see, I've been doing this for a long time, and now I've got more gray on the outside than I do on the inside. But we all were just at another conference and looked around, and a couple of people pointed out that it seems like we have a critical mass, of voices that typically had been, either outlier voices or sometimes marginalized voices. The room was filled with IP scholars who were all people of color. And as a result, the suggestion was that, perhaps we ought to be able to do something, with this, that the types of conversations about how IP can be better, how it can serve the needs of society more effectively, how it can be more inclusive, how it can do more of the work throughout the total political economy that had throughout the latter half of the 20th century began to fall by the wayside. And so rather than continuing to have these conversations as sort of add-ons at the prevailing scholarly conferences, how about moving these conversations, these issues to the center, making the conversation about that? And so we all got together and came up with the concept of that type of gathering, calling it IP Mosaic to reflect the multiplicity of viewpoints and individuals and the diversity of ideas and participation that the conference would be all about. But of course, as we all know, we academics were very good about coming up with ideas in the abstract, right? But they don't become real until something happens on the ground. And it didn't become real until one of the founders, Deidre Keller, who is now the dean at FAMU, was at a subsequent conference a few weeks later with Professor Murray. And they had the conversation. And as folks know, I like to always point to the Captain America metaphor, and that's Kaylee Murray, because now we had a leader. Right? Now we had a headquarters, right? Now we actually became a team, right? Because Professor Murray offered, hey, in perfect Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, format, and my dad has a barn, right? And we can put on a show. And Professor Murray says, hey, and I've got a school, right? And I've got a dean, okay, who are willing to support this, and we can actually make this a real thing, a real conference at a real place. And although the idea has been to generally make this a peripatetic conference so that we can move it around the country and give other schools that may have been a little bit slow, okay, not as quick as Marquette, but to give other schools the opportunity to host and participate and to engage, our first and regular home has been and always will be at Marquette. And for certain, when we get to our 10th annual, which is not that far away, okay, this is the place that we're going to be. One last thought in terms of the evolution of this program. It's interesting how even in the most difficult of times, there can be some positives that come out of situations. And one of the positives that has come out of the events of the last 2 years, obviously talking about the pandemic, was that, in the shift to an online format, one of the great things that has come out of that is that we have been able to greatly enlarge the audience, particularly our international audience. I remember that at either the first or second Mosaic, we had someone who came all the way over I think he came over from Switzerland, and he gave a presentation. And, we all felt bad that here it is, this guy had come all the way over from Switzerland, and he only had 15, 20 minutes to present on his paper, right? And so when it was a completely in-person conference, it was difficult to include the international audience. And now that we are online, we have many, many, many people from all around the world, time zones notwithstanding. And I know that as we will move back into an in-person experience, because we all know that's going to happen. We're going to be completely beyond this pandemic at some point in time, hopefully next year. But even as we go back to in-person, we're all committed to maintaining a hybrid aspect to this. so is that we can always make certain that people throughout the country, around the world, again, time zones notwithstanding, will all have the opportunity to participate in this conference, because that's really what this conference is all about. Substantively, it's about a relatively simple idea, right? The social justice perspective or lens through which we approach IP is just basically saying that, IP can and should do more and do better. But the only way that IP can do more and do better is that if we recognize that the purpose of the IP system is to promote human actualization towards the greater good and overall benefit of society, right? And by human actualization, we mean encouraging people to develop and apply their intellectual, innovative, and creative talents towards intellectual output to the benefit of society as a whole. And the only way that we can maximize that process is that we have this system based upon principles of socially equitable access, inclusion, and empowerment, and assessed by those principles as well. If everyone has the opportunity to participate, to benefit from, to be engaged with the IP system and be empowered by the IP system, then the system is doing what it is supposed to do. And at any point in time that we have to do a systems check, we return to those principles to make certain that those principles are not just in theory, not just in the abstract, but that's actually what the system is doing on the ground. So with that, rather than my, continuing, to go on and on and on, let's eat this cake, right? Let's start divvying it up and enjoying it. And that will take us to our first program. But I think just before we move to the first panel, I believe that Kaylee Murray has some administrative, technological, et cetera, announcements to make. So let me turn it over to you, Kaylee.
Hey, thanks. Thank you all for participating. And I'm just here to sort of make sure that the trains run on time, so to speak. And so the way that the panels will work is that at the start of each panel, I will make the host, I will make the panelists and the moderators co-hosts for the panel so that we may share content. And then at the close of your panel, I will remove your powers as co-host and host and turn it over to the next set of panelists to begin. So that's the first sort of major logistical thing. The second, and hopefully you've spoken with your moderator and panelists to work through the individual breakout of each particular panel. So the next sort of logistical thing is that we have set up a green room and a lobby in case you need to have conversations offline with folks. Where the lobby is different for each kind of iteration of Zoom, but basically, at least on mine, you hit more and it says breakout room, and you can go to the breakout rooms and they're either in the green room or the lobby. So again, if you want to organize your panel quickly before the start of your panel, you can always ask everybody to meet over in the green room or the lobby to discuss the organization of your panel. Third, the queue. The queue will be, please chat the moderator of the panel. If you have a question, just say, hey, I would like to have a question. And then when we turn to the question time of each panel, the moderator will sort of say, John has a question and turn it over to you. So please be respectful of time as you ask your questions to the panelists. We want to make sure that everybody can speak during their time. I think that is the primary set of announcements that we have to make. I would like to thank Eric Atwell and Ryan Rao, our IT team, for helping us set up the Zoom panel and presentation. And I'd also like to thank Tasha Bunch, who does everything, guys, everything. And so we have to make sure that we thank her for managing what has become a very complex logistical process associated with the conference. So I just wanted to make sure we gave Tasha a shout out at the beginning. I'm sure Lateef will shout her out some more. There's just going to be shout outs aplenty for the work that she does in organizing this conference. So thank you so much. And I'm happy to turn it over to our first panel, which is International IP and Social Justice. And also, if you want to turn off your cameras during the panelist presentations, that's always good, just so somebody's dog doesn't wander through somebody else's panel. So can't wait, let's get started.